Well, let's get into this discussion now. The looting and burning of infrastructure continues in some parts of the country. This as rolling riots spread in various parts of Gauteng and in KwaZulu-Natal. And have these exposed the weaknesses in the ANC-led government? We'll ask that question of the chairperson who joins us now, Gwede Mantashe. Mr. Mantashe, thank you very much for your time. First up, I'd like to talk about what is at least on the people's lips this morning, and it's got to do with the deployment of only 2,500 soldiers on the streets of Gauteng and in KZN. Is that enough to get the desired impact? What's your assessment as the governing party?
My starting point, Xoli, is to pass my condolences to the Dango family. That's why Jesse is not here. Let me outline my observation. I've driven around Gauteng a little bit yesterday, and my conclusion was that the biggest impact is on the infrastructure that is serving the poor and the working people. You destroy that infrastructure. After you have finished this, you have self-satisfaction, but people will be suffering. They will have to travel long distances to buy bread. They're going to go very far if they get any job. It will take long to reconstruct the economic infrastructure that has been destroyed. And to me, that is the issue. And that talks to the issue of the deployment of soldiers. It's an area that I don't want to venture into, because if soldiers have everyone, when they arrive, the impact is visible. I saw that in Alex yesterday. But if there are few, the impact is going to be slow. But at the end of the day, it is the working people and the poor who are going to suffer out of this exercise. And I can assure you, Xoli, it is not anything to do with Zuma. It is everything to do with thugs who want to get rich quick and steal as much as they can as soon as possible.
Mr. Mantashe, let me come in there. The question is, sir, is the deployment of 2,500 soldiers enough to quell the situation? As we speak right now, KZN is on its knees. In fact, businesses there are calling for a state of disaster or even a state of emergency to be declared. You can't get away from this one. You simply cannot.
I'm not trying to get away, but I know that there's a person called Newzroom Afrika, the Minister of Defense, and Newzroom Afrika has a right to invite her and put that question to her directly. My own view is that the more soldiers are there on the street, the better the situation will be.
Well, at least you've acknowledged that part, that the more soldiers you have, the more stability you are going to get. All right.
I agree with you there.
Let's soldier on then. The public heard from the security cluster ministers yesterday, and I just want you to have a listen to what we were told by the Minister of State Security. This is the minister who intelligence operatives report to, and she was responding to a question about why it is that we have seen so much destruction over the past 5 days if this country had intelligence. Let's just have a listen to her response.
The target was very fast moving. We tried our best wherever we could, and we averted a lot more than what you see on national television because of the proactive stance that was taken by both intelligence services of the three ministries, but also the work that was done by the police in averting greater crime that could have occurred in that time. So I want South Africans to be rest assured that we did avert a lot. What you see is only a part of what could have happened. So we were not missing in action as SSA, and I dare say even the police were not missing in action. We tried our level best under a very difficult situation. And I would like to commend the two departments, because it is the young men and women and those that command them in these structures that really put the shoulder to the wheel to ensure that that information is available.
Mr. Mantashe, should the South African public believe Minister Xoli.
Let me talk about the ANC, because you invited me as chairperson. Where structures of the ANC have taken proactive action, damage is minimal and it's not there. That's why this action has not spread to 7 other provinces. It is limited to 2 provinces. And in all the provinces where there is a relative stability is because structures at the lowest level, branch and zonal level, talk to people. And I think the more we do that, the better will be. Then the state must play its role, which is complementary to the work that is done in terms of legwork that we do, talking to our people directly. And therefore, Minister Xoli, as the Minister of State Security, can do more. And she says we have averted a lot more. Now, what you have averted is not visible. What is visible is where damage has happened. And therefore, people are not going to believe that because they don't see what you have averted.
What is this? What is it that has been averted, Mr. Mantashe?
I don't know, because if it's averted, it has not happened.
So you see, the public simply cannot agree or believe something that they simply could not witness. Mr. Mantashe, the Minister of State Security has failed.
The point I'm making, Xoli, is anything you have averted will not be in the public eye. Only what has happened will be in the public eye. Therefore, when you talk of the public cannot talk of what is averted because they will not know it. They will talk of what has happened because they have seen it. And that is natural.
Mr. Mantashe, you and I, let's agree to disagree on this one.
Actually, we agree.
I want to move on. Oh, so we do agree that there has been a failure.
I don't assess people on failures and success. I'm saying.
But you agree that there has been intelligence failure to detect these?
I'm saying people will not see what has been averted, but they will see what has happened. And therefore, when you talk to the public and talk about what is averted, they can't understand it. They will not appreciate it. It has not happened. They have not seen it.
Then we have the situation that holds in KwaZulu-Natal, Mr. Mantashe. The businesses there, you heard me right at the beginning, stating that they are calling for some kind of state of disaster or even emergency to be declared. Do you agree with that sentiment?
I agree with strong measures, state of emergency, state of disaster. I agree with that. KZN has been the hardest hit in this situation, and I think they need the support of everybody because there the disaster is moving away from basic infrastructure to actually points of production.
So if you agree with either a state of emergency or a state of disaster to be declared in KZN, what is the president waiting for?
But the state of disaster is part of the COVID-19 measures. What is important is to actually strengthen the measures to fit the situation. We're already in a state of disaster.
All right. So, Mr. Mantashe, these acts, I think now we are in day 5 of this unrest. There is a view that they are being coordinated from somewhere. What is your assessment as the governing party?
I agree with that. They are invited. Actually, people are coordinating them. Issue social media commands from time to time. And my own view is that that's where the state security must come in. We must change those numbers, get those people. When I listened to the Minister of Police yesterday, he said there were 10 people who are commanding this. And the more they get to those, the better the situation will be. Well, because those people have no interest of either Zuma or the working people.
Well, that's just the social media people, about 12 of them to be exact, that the minister said. There are those, Mr. Mantashe, that are being investigated by the Minister of State Security, and we are talking here about former intelligence operatives and some politicians who are being probed, and we're told they are aligned to former President Jacob Zuma. What does that tell you? Because this is something that has been acknowledged by the minister as she responded to this question, that perhaps this is indeed part of the bigger problem, that there are those within the intelligence structures that are coordinating this, and politicians aligned to former President Jacob Zuma.
That's why when the Minister of Police said we've identified 10 people which were investigated, I thought that the speed in that investigation would be helpful, because that is where the problem is. Not the food soldiers who go and steal groceries in shops. That is a problem, because those who steal the groceries wake up tomorrow, have no bread to buy, and they will suffer, pay the price. The key people are that 10 that the Minister of Police was talking about. And I would imagine when the Minister of Police talk of 10 people, politicians and former state security agents, it's a report of the security cluster having combat notes.
Well, isn't that a bigger challenge, therefore, that this is actually being coordinated from within the ANC? But we continue the conversation in just a moment. If you're just joining us, we are talking to the chairperson of the African National Congress, Gwede Mantashe. And Mr. Mantashe, as we went to that short break, the acknowledgement that this is in part being coordinated from within the ANC, that's a major concern. And I just want the public to get a taste of exactly what the Minister of State Security had to say yesterday, responding to these claims.
We did receive such information as the SSA, and we are investigating it. Any information that comes to us, you will understand. We investigate, we do an analysis, we determine and sift fact from fiction. So we are in the process of doing that. That information that you have, we also have. We're working on it. Our responsibility as SSA is to gather information, correlate information, package it properly for a client. It becomes intelligence, and we hand it over to law enforcement or a department that so needs that information. More than that, there's nothing that we can do. We provide intelligence product to our client. The police are our client. In certain instances, the defense force would be our client. All other departments of government become our clients.
Mr. Mantashe, the minister says this information we have been sitting with it. Of course, the challenge is to try and make sure that it is verified. If this is the information that has been sitting with security forces, why have we not seen arrests of those who are coordinating this, at least within the ANC?
Now, the problem is that you have a target group in your mind called the ANC. Attacks are attacks. They have no title. They're not ANC. They're not anybody else. They're attacks. If they are coordinating looting, whether it's a member of the ANC or not, that is attack. And they must be treated as such. So you must expect the arrest of the 10 people that have been identified and ensure that they are arrested, whether in the ANC or not in the ANC. And the ANC is a macrocosm of society. You find all sorts of people in the ANC, naturally so. But any thug who is part of the looting must be arrested, whether he's a member of the ANC or not.
The ANC is a microcosm of society, and I'd like to pick up on that point, Mr. Mantashe, to say the unrest that we are seeing is in part as a result of the failures of the ANC's economic policy choices of the last 2 decades. I want to get to this question, that there are those who say perhaps this is a signal of our own Arab Spring. Do you agree with those observations?
It is a desire by a number of journalists, but it's not a reality. The reality is there is unrest in KZN and Gauteng. There's no arrest in 7 provinces of the country. Now, what is the preoccupation? It should be to contain the unrest in those 2 provinces and ultimately eliminate it. If we succeed in that, the dream of an Arab Spring, I'm sure it will be called South African Spring, will remain a dream, because there are many who desire for some Arab Spring and overthrow of government and all those things. That's why your preamble is failure of economic policies of the ANC. And what we are not analyzing, Polly, which we will require another day. For example, what you always call middle class bulge, which is the first growth of black middle class, you have never done analysis of that. What is it? Is it a failure or a success? When intellectual development outpaces the economic growth, is in itself a sign of success and failure to absorb. And that analysis is for another day.
Mr. Mantashe, I put it to you that this is not a desire of journalists, certainly not by me or Newzroom Afrika. This is something that has been said by, among others, your key alliance partners in COSATU. Xoli Mngambi, I cannot tell you the amount of times he spoke about a powder keg, which is the young people, and he would phrase it as the army of young people who are unemployed and who one day are going to rise up against this government. Isn't that the very same thing that was predicted by him? Because these are young people who are doing this looting, is it not?
That is a basic Marxist analysis, which you should use as a tool rather than fact. When you use a tool of analysis, you're not stating facts, you're doing an analysis. And I think Xoli Mngambi, who's not in COSATU, by the way.
Well, he was in COSATU at the time, he was saying.
He is not now. He is not now. Has a right to do analysis, as I have a right to do analysis. But analysis is not facts. It's actually extrapolation of emerging trends and create real pictures into the future. So that right is important, and it is a very important exercise for any thinking person.
Let's move on, Mr. Mantashe, and I want to talk about the person in whose name these unrests began, and that's former President Jacob Zuma. He has said in his court papers that sending him to jail would be tantamount to condemning him to death, and he raises the issue of his ill health and the ever-present COVID-19. I just want to ask you the question, does the ANC believe that a 15-month imprisonment is too harsh or was sufficient given his actions towards the highest court in the land?
Ebony, you cannot deny the fact that former President Jacob Zuma is 79, is going for 80, that is old age. And imprisonment of that age, old people, cannot be conducive in any country, That is a fact, and the health of President Zuma is known now. What should have happened, and I always blame advisors who go close to his ear and whisper wrong advices, that he should have stated that in what he avoided. He didn't go to the commission, didn't go to the Concord. That is where he should have stated that issue. Now, he's stating those realities after the fact, and I'm saying that is a function of wrong advices. And as a result of that, he's a victim of those wrong advices. And some of the people who do that pretending to be loving him. You don't give a wrong advice and pretend to love a person.
The question, Mr. Mantashe, I'm asking you is, does the ANC think that a 15-month jail sentence for contempt of court was too harsh or was adequate given his actions towards the court?
I'm saying you're asking two questions in one. I'm saying you should have stated that in the processes of the court. That's the first thing. And the outcome would be different, I would imagine. Now, boycotting court and the commission was ill advised, and therefore ended this sentence. And my view is that any sentence for an 8-year-old is harsh. Yeah.
All right. Let's conclude the conversation then and talk about what would happen if his fears were to come true, and that is that he dies in prison. What would that do for the stability of the country?
You know, colleague, one of my ambitions much earlier was to be a priest, many years ago. And one basic lesson that you learn from the Bible is that you never talk about death, because nobody knows death. Even the most closest to God will not know when the death comes. So you want me to talk about death, which I don't know.
I want you to talk about the stability of the country.
No, you don't want me to talk about stability of the country. You want me to talk about death or no death of Jacob Zuma. It's a very awkward subject that we are raising. It's actually insensitive.
Well, he raised it himself, Mr. Mantashe. I'm not raising it.
Let him raise it, but it is an insensitive subject to talk about death or no death of a human being.
Well, that's...
I can't talk about the death. Okay. Young as you are, you collapse next week, you die. I can't predict that. I don't want to.
All right, Mr. Mantashe, let's leave it there. That's the chairperson of the African National Congress, Gwede Mantashe.